One of my personal least favorite Star Trek The Next Generation episodes, the outrageous Okona would go down in history as proof that sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, or in this case, a title is just a title, as there is nothing outrageous whatsoever about Okona. Hello and welcome to Backtrack, a web series that focuses on the background information of any given topic in Star Trek. In this episode, we're taking a look at Star Trek The Next Generation's episode, The Outrageous Okona, to better understand its place in Star Trek history. So here we are, one of my least favorite episodes of Star Trek, The Outrageous Okona, and yet the episode isn't really that bad, at least when compared to other much worse episodes in Trek's history. Threshold, I'm looking at you. Yet this is one of those episodes that really bothers me because of its title alone. The story was written by three people, Les Mention, Lance Dickinson, and David Landsberg, while the teleplay was written by a fourth person, Burton Armis. And maybe that's part of the problem. See, when I write an episode for this channel or a story in my personal life, I have a clear direction for that story I come up with. Because of course, I'm only one person. That's not to say that multiple people can't come up with or write good stories. It's just in my experience, the more people you add into the mix, the less the story ends up becoming. Again, because they all have different visions and different goals for the story or what the story should become. And I think this is evident in this particular Trek episode. This episode is the only writing credit for Les Mention, and given the name Les Mention, I'm guessing it's an alias for another person who didn't want their name connected with this particular project, and that's probably a good idea. Lance Dickinson had only 3 writing credits to his name. This episode, a film he wrote and directed called Hollywood Heartbreak, and writing additional material for the cult classic 1985 film Hellhole. David Landsberg, on the other hand, has 13 writing credits to his name, but seems he was more focused on his acting career as he has 30 acting credits to his name. So I'd probably say that the inexperience of these 3 individuals at the time would have also played a huge part in making this particular episode feel so middle of the road. Burton Armis, on the other hand, is an Emmy award-winning television producer and writer who co-wrote the story and wrote the teleplay for the TNG episode A Matter of Honor, and made significant contributions to the script for TNG's The Icarus Factor, though he was not credited on that latter project. Armis was also the producer on the first 13 episodes of TNG's second season. Robert Becker directed this episode. He wasn't a prolific director, like some directors for TNG, having only 13 separate TV series that he worked on between 1983 and 1993. Though most of these separate TV shows he'd direct multiple episodes of. He also directed the TNG episode We'll Always Have Paris, and I think he was a competent director, making the most of the story he had been given, so I can't fault him there. I would have liked to see what he could have become, but unfortunately he died on May 6, 1993, in a car accident in Santa Clarita, California. He was only 47 years old. The story itself is pretty subpar. Put simply, this episode is really boring. I mean, with a title like The Outrageous Okona, you would tend to think that he'd be outrageous in some form or capacity, but he simply isn't. I mean, look at what he does in this episode that has Wesley drooling all over him and the rest of the crew praising him like they just met a god. It's really nothing that great or outrageous. In fact, the outrageous behavior he displays is pretty much a regular Monday night for William Riker. I mean, is sleeping with the transporter officer really that outrageous? William O. Campbell was cast as Thadian Okona, and he does play the part well. He's tall, good-looking, charming, and I can understand why he was cast. Again, the fault lying within the story rather than those involved in bringing this story to life. Mr. Campbell was actually up for the role of William T. Riker, but as we all know, Jonathan Frakes won the part. But Campbell would go on to play many different roles in many different TV shows and movies. Did you know he was in Bram Stoker's Dracula, for example? Joe Piscopo was hired to play the funniest man alive, and that ever lived apparently, for the holodeck scenes with Data. An interesting little bit of Trek trivia for you all is that Piscopo was allowed to improvise his jokes and dialogue as the character. You'll note that Piscopo does an impression of the great Jerry Lewis himself. This is interesting, as Jerry Lewis was actually approached to be the comic in this episode. Unfortunately though, scheduling conflicts would prevent that from happening. Terry Hatcher would come on board to play the ship's transporter chief, B.G. Robinson. Hatcher, for me at least, is best known for playing Lois Lane in Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman, where because of that show, her career would take off and she'd become quite successful herself, still acting to this day. There are some great things about this episode though. Besides being only one of 2 episodes in TNG's second season that did not have Dr. Pulaski in it. And for me, the greatest of these things was Brent Spiner's acting. Brent truly knows how to bring Data to life, in a way that suspends all your disbelief about the character. I mean, Brent could say that Data has positronic Lego for a brain, and we the audience would simply nod and agree. I don't think this man truly gets enough credit for the wonderful job he does with every role he gets. There's also a cute little callback in this episode in regards to Data. At one point, Okona asks Data if he's ever been drunk, and Data says, "Not from alcohol." Of course, this is a reference to the TNG episode The Naked Now, in which Data becomes infected with the virus that makes the crew act super drunk. Now, the crew's behavior in that episode I'd classify as being outrageous. The holodeck terminal lists the name of the comic in this episode as Ronald B. Moore, which is of course a reference to TNG's visual effects supervisor Ronald B. Moore, who helped assemble the graphics for this episode. Now, I've made this particular episode of Backtrek by request. See, oftentimes I'll make fun of this episode, in good spirits of course, and so a fan of this channel challenged me to take a deep dive into Okona, and I've tried to do so. Unfortunately, however, the episode is so boring that there isn't even really that much background information on it. A testament, I suppose, to how middle of the road this episode truly is. I mean, you know how boring something is when it doesn't even have a really funny anecdote to accompany it. But I'm still glad to have made this episode, as it gave me a break from all the research I've been doing for the continuation of my Star Trek Historical Overview series. Many of you have been asking when the next episode of that series is coming out, and all I can do is ask you all to be patient. Due to the format I've chosen, that being chronological order, at least the next 2 episodes of that series will be about TNG's Seasons 1 and 2, and because of that fact alone, I've had to go back and basically start from scratch, researching the 2 seasons to give you the quality episodes that you deserve. Unfortunately, there is a lot of information to sift through and confirm, so please be patient. Anyhow, I leave you here now with the television promo for the outrageous Okona, which in itself tries to make the most of the episode it can, so I hope you enjoy.
Next time on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Data, do you even know what a joke is?
Joe Piscopo helps Data become the king of comedy.
Show me what is funny.
All right, you're on.
But a fugitive on the ship is no laughing matter.
You will come with me now!
And he's being hunted by enemies who could trigger a war.
They're threatening to attack the Enterprise.
On Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Thank you for watching today's episode of Backtrek. What do you think of the outrageous Okona? Does he blow you away with his outrageousness? Do you have an episode of any Star Trek series that you'd like me to research and review for Backtrek? Well, leave your comments in the section below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, hitting that little bell icon so you won't miss a single video we release. If you want to help the channel out with being truly outrageous, then consider becoming a channel patron. The link to our Patreon account is in the description below. Thanks again for watching. Live long and prosper. Okay, so this is a bit of a picky one, but hey, that's what I'm here for. Watch when Worf is sent to retrieve Okona. He finds him in a female's quarters. The numbers to the left of the door indicate that they are on deck 7. However, when they walk to the turbolift, the numbers there indicate they are on deck 11. Someone made a mistake here.